Hey everyone, welcome back to 21st Century Saints. It's been a long time since we've been with you. It's been what? It's all January, I think, was the last time we did a podcast. And we really have missed you all. We've mentioned frequently online that we're constantly working away in the background. There's a lot of safeguarding work that's been happening. So we've not been off the radar as such, and we're very much keeping an eye on things. But yeah, we've had a lot going on. Events have kind of
we've had a lot going on.
Sara's panicking trying to turn down our YouTube now. You all hear that? Sara's freaking out. Sara's forgot how this
I like
works.
to make my presence felt to everybody, just to make sure you know I'm here.
I love it.
Messing things up, I'm here.
So yeah, we've been working away. Loads of stuff going on personally, but this, what we're going to talk about tonight, a lot of things have been brewing, particularly for Sara, over the past, a long time. I was going to say over the past few months. This is going back way longer than this. And over this entire journey where Sara's been such a crucial part of the work of 21st Century Saints, Sara's driven this work in so many ways. There's been a story that Sara hasn't been able to tell in the background, to really talk about how she's feeling and what she's been up against. We have a very clickbaity title, which we're going to talk about, but there is so much more than just the title, I Quit. We're going to explain what that's all about in a moment. But welcome to the audience. We've missed you. Sara, hey,
welcome.
Look, we're home.
We're back. We're back with our chat family, and it's really good to be back here.
Hey.
As Jane said, we've been busy. We've been doing an awful lot of stuff, and we've been navigating that incredibly difficult space between trying to hold on to our integrity, the integrity that we care about, trying to maintain relationships with a church that doesn't actually really seem to have room for us or want us or what we want to offer, and trying to sort of bring about a much safer, healthier church for everybody that is still involved and still actively engaged. And it's been a challenging few years and a few months. It's been for quite a months, and I think things have reached ahead, and we've made decisions that are not these decisions that we're going to discuss tonight have been reached in a few seconds. They haven't been reached in a few moments. They've been reached over months and months and months of how do we continue to advocate, campaign and push for safeguarding, which is so passionate and close to our hearts. How do we hold on to our integrity, and how do we actually have any kind of positive mental health and spiritual health and well-being in the process?
Absolutely. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. First of all, you all who have been with us on this journey for a while know that sometimes we get plagued with internet gremlins. In advance, we apologise. Please let us know if it gets so bad that that there's anything that we can tweak or do about it. But in the meantime, just if you could just be as patient and as kind with us as we can. You all in the chat, we appreciate the support that you guys have been showing so far, and we're only just here. Just please know we would really value your comments throughout this episode. And if you have any questions, we'll either address them throughout it or at the end if you've got anything specific. Okay.
Oh, can I just say, Jane, if there are any significant questions or things that we don't cover tonight that you want us to go back and cover, then we are really happy to pick up our microphones again at another date and actually cover all of those in more detail. So anything you want to know that we don't cover, just come back and tell us, and we will.
Exactly. Yeah, because we're going to be back next week anyway. We've already got some stuff.
We've got plans.
We thought, we're doing this. Yeah, we're kicking down the door, and
we're coming back next week.
The room.
Guest, we're coming back with somebody who's going to be amazing next week. So we're not going to tell you about that yet, though.
Okay.
Right.
We have a lot to get to, so I'm going to jump right in. And it's always for me really important to clarify why Sara is perfectly placed to speak about the subject of safeguarding. Now, we're not just going to be talking about safeguarding tonight. Safeguarding is going to be part of this. We've got some grenades to throw, I suppose. So it's definitely worth hanging in there to hear what's been happening in the background, things that we haven't been able to talk about. But just for context, before we when we get to those points, Sara, could you share a little bit about how big of an expert you are? It's my favourite subject to talk about. How she hates this. She hates this.
Right. Jane loves to call me an expert. I prefer to call myself as just having some specialist knowledge and skills and experience. Jane loves the word expert, and I love Jane because she has so much faith in me. She's phenomenal.
Would a judge refer to you as an expert witness whenever you fulfilled that role before?
We all know judges. We all know judges are a little bit screwball.
Have you ever served in that role? Yes, she bloody well has. So she's an expert.
Okay, all right. So really quickly, because I think everybody is probably tired of me talking about my background because we've done it so often. But my background is one of qualified probation officer, social worker, and worked in the field of around about for 25 plus years, working within the field of sexual abuse and sexual harm. From working with rape crisis groups, NSPCC, statutory local authorities, safeguarding teams, probation service, working with victims of abuse, adult offenders who have perpetrated abuse, and children and young people where there was significant trauma and abuse, and they were also displaying very harmful behaviour. And currently continue to deliver professional training in that field through an organisation that's funded by the Home Office and hosted by Bernarda. So I continue to work a couple of days a month delivering training for professionals across the UK in that space. So that's kind of my background, I suppose, about why, and that's why I kind of felt so strongly about speaking out about safeguarding in the Mormon Church, because it just wasn't okay. It wasn't good enough, and that's why we decided that we would draw upon some of the contacts that I'd got within the field professionally to support us, as well as drawing upon knowledge and skills and experience to actually say this isn't okay and this has to change. And that's how we actually got into the safeguarding journey.
As someone who gets to sort of hear Sara going through practice runs of some of the training that she currently delivers, I mean, this woman's tried to retire and, you know, leave jobs. They keep coaxing her back because she's that good. So yeah, having come out of retirement to be fulfilling these roles, Sara's delivering training which is in the cutting edge of safeguarding practice, of research about the issues surrounding safeguarding. I mean, this stuff is exceptional, and it's my hope that in the future, maybe Sara will be able to sort of share some of the things that she's learned, because we've kept it very Mormon centric. You all are going to want to know some of this phenomenal stuff in this woman's mind. Now, that's safeguarding. Can you tell us a bit, Sara, your Mormonism background, because this is going to be super relevant to tonight. You've been edgy. Tell me about your feelings about the church when we first met. This whole time you've been podcasting, what kind of Mormon were you? You kind of TBM-y?
Well,
or
before I became a little bit edgy and a bit nuanced and possibly moved into dissidence and rebellion or whatever else people want to call it, I was very TBM. I was very orthodox. I was very straight down the line. I was very TBM. I joined the church along with my husband. We had 2 children that were 2.5 and 12 months old at the time we joined the church, which is almost 50 years ago now. And from when we first joined the church, I would honestly say Jerry, my husband, was 100% more committed to the church than I was. But that changed very quickly, and I became very, very committed and got I drank the Kool-Aid. I drowned in Kool-Aid. I swam in Kool-Aid. I breathed it. I must have sunk to high heaven of Kool-Aid. But over the years of being in the church, I mean, yeah, I changed things when I joined the church, did what so many people did, gave up alcohol, tea, coffee, smoking, did all those things, became a bit of a Molly Mormon. Didn't like to upset or challenge anyone. I wanted to kind of be good, and I wanted to keep the rules, and I wouldn't have said boo to a bishop if he'd asked me how high I could jump. I'd have just done exactly what they said, because I'd have thought that was the right thing to do. Over the years in the church, I've been Relief Society president. I don't know if it's 3 times or twice, I can't remember. Been primary president, young. They had to keep going back and asking me to do it again, see if I could get it right, Jane. Did calling primary president, young women's president, counsellors, teaching, all the callings that you have as you go through the church. Taught seminary, early morning seminary for 9 years, which I have to say at the time as a calling I loved. I loved early morning teaching teenagers. It was great. But all those things all through the church, went to the temple every month, had family home evening, family prayer, family scripture study, wrote a journal every night, had missionaries living with us for years. Sister missionaries lived in our home for several years. So we were kind of Molly Mormon family that the sister missionaries could live with us. So very involved in all the missionary work that was going on in the church because of that. So yeah, 100% was there, doing it, living it, breathing it.
And then
didn't, there were always things I would say there were always things that unsettled me about the church, and things that shocked and I didn't like and I struggled with, but I absolutely had this ability to put them in a box and think, one day I'll understand that. I don't understand it yet because I don't have the ability, but I will one day. The first thing that absolutely rocked my world, I didn't know. Now, I joined the church in January 1979. Now, that's really significant because that is only a few months after the priesthood ban.
Yeah.
The priesthood restrictions were lifted. That was not long after that. And yet I knew nothing about that. And it was months and months and months into my church membership before I heard somebody mention it. And I can still remember the shockwaves that went through me when I said, you mean because people were black, they weren't allowed to hold the priesthood? That can't be true. I don't believe that. And I went around asking lots of people because I was so convinced it couldn't be true, to find out it was true. And that absolutely rocked me. It really did. I put it in a box, I put it on one side, I forgot about it. Then I started realising how the church felt about gay people, and kind of thought, whoa, don't like this. This is really makes me feel uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. But again, put it on one side. And I thought, it's because I haven't got enough faith yet. I need to pray for more faith. I need to pray to be more humble, to understand more fully, to understand more completely. So I made it my mission to try and just do more scripture study, go to temple more often, fast a bit more often, try and understand these things that I didn't understand because I kind of saw myself as just lacking that spiritual ability to understand those things. So from early on, there were things that kind of troubled me and bothered me, but I was literally, the depths to which they got buried deep inside is kind of unreal, really. They were just pushed so far away that I was able to just keep going, and periodically they'd surface and I'd push them away again. And then it was actually when I was teaching early morning seminary, I started just having more and more doubts about things I was hearing, things that I was teaching. And I just started just having a lot more questions, a lot more concerns about the church. And I tried a few times to raise these with various people at church. I can remember mentioning it to a Relief Society president, a bishop, a couple of other people saying, and the answer I always got back was, just read your scriptures and pray. And at the time I'm teaching early morning seminary, and the advice I got was, well, you need to read your scriptures. I thought, do you think I'm not doing that? Do you actually think I'm not reading the scriptures kind of several times a day?
Passion in your was, right?
I never thought of that. What a good idea, Bishop. I'll go and read my scriptures and get them out from under the bed. What a good idea. But I mean, it's just madness, really. But anyway, that's how it was.
Can I ask you a question at this point? Because while those doubts are happening, would you share, because I don't know that you've ever talked about this in a podcast. If you have, it's been a while. You shared the story many times with us, Brit Avengers crew, about there being a situation when you were serving as a social worker that you were asked to come into a room and offer your advice about this situation. Could you share that?
Yeah, that was
tell us about that.
Quite a number of years ago, and kind of everyone at church knew the job that I did. In fact, interesting, I never spoke about the fact that my job was very specialist around sexual harm and sexual abuse. I rarely shared that with anybody, but everybody knew I worked in safeguarding and child protection and social work at church. Everybody knew that. And I was kind of just at the back of the chapel one Sunday towards the end of meetings, and somebody came in and just said, "Can you come and join the bishop in his office for a moment?" So I kind of went off into the office, and he said, we've got some real worries about a family in the ward. We're worried about these parents and these children, and we're really concerned. We just wanted to have a discussion about whether there might be some neglect or abuse happening. And I said, okay. I said, let me just make it very, very clear to you that if you're about to talk to me about a situation where you think there might be abuse or neglect, I said, I, as a social worker, will be reporting this to the authorities. And I will never to this day forget that. Bishop sat there and he looked at me and he said, "Will you please leave the meeting? We don't need you." And that was when I realised just how dire safeguarding was in this church. Now, I've never forgotten that.
Mm.
It was quite a number of years ago, and I sort of knew the family they were talking about, and I thought, know who you're talking about. So I actually made it my business to make sure that I spoke to somebody and said, "Hey, have you had a referral on this family?" And they said, "Yeah, schools have already been in touch." I thought, okay,
that's my girl. Yes, because
that actually, that really hit me with just how dire things were in safeguarding within the church. I thought, if we've got, because I went away then, I thought, I wonder if this is happening in other places. I wonder if other people have been kept away from information about safeguarding because they don't want the authorities to know. Why were they worried when I said I was going to report it to the authorities? And I went away puzzling because at that point I was still very TBM-ish, really was. And I was kind of worried about that, thinking, well, why wouldn't they want the authorities to know if they think a child might be neglected or abused? And there was significant neglect going on with this family, very significant neglect. And children's services were involved, and these children did end up on a child protection plan. So there was room to be concerned.
Yeah.
But the church's view was, well, can you just leave the meeting, then we don't need you.
Yeah.
So that made it clear to me. And it's rather shameful to say, and I'm a bit ashamed and embarrassed about that. It was still several years before we took on this fight properly. We kept trying to have conversations with people at church from that moment on to say, can I talk to you about safeguarding? I spoke to the bishop, I spoke to stake presidents, various bishops, and said, please, can we have a conversation about safeguarding? Because how are you handling it in the church? What are the policies? What are you doing? I'm really concerned about it. And I just kept getting told the priests have it all in hand. And then it was really when Jane and I got together that we kind of thought the priesthood have absolutely nothing in hand, absolutely zilch in hand. We need to get this in hand because nobody else seems to be a bit arrogant.
A couple of other things
I found it quite arrogant, that, didn't it?
Sara arrogant, right? Okay, yeah, and a cow jumped over the moon. The least arrogant person I've ever met. Anyway, Sara, there's a couple of things I want to just pick out before we can move on. First of all, again, hey everyone in the chat. Thank you so much. Your comments are wonderful. It's great to have so many of you with us. We've got the wonderful Peter Bleakley, Mormon Civil War, in the chat. He's going to be at Sunstone this weekend, leading some panel discussions and giving a fantabulous talk. If you want to find out more information about that, visit the Sunstone UK Facebook page. Everybody's having a big old, Mormon and ex-Mormon party in the UK this weekend. So, go find out more. But Sara, I wanted to ask you about, so that's the safeguarding work that you're doing. Yeah. But when we meet, you are definitely what we would call an active, edgy Mormon. And I'm going to, when I say active, edgy Mormon, I'm using active in its loosest possible terms, right? So, would you talk a little bit about what it looked like for you?
Well, I think when we first met, I was actually teaching youth Sunday school, I think, at that time. And there was a few interesting discussions while I was teaching youth Sunday school. I remember one lesson came up was about the family proclamation. And I remember saying to the bishop, I'm not teaching that lesson. I said, so we either skip that lesson altogether and I teach something entirely different, or you need to assign someone else to teach it, because I'm not teaching the youth that. And Bishop gave me permission to teach another lesson, said, because I needed his permission, of course, because I did then. And so I just kind of moved on. So I got to part, I was quite happy to challenge by that point and say, no, I'm not doing that. That's not okay. But kind of was still active and going to church. And there was still a lot of me that was still thinking, maybe if I'm just a little bit more faithful and a little bit more obedient, and maybe if I just try that little bit harder, maybe I'll start to believe how I used to again. Maybe I'll start to feel and believe, because by this time my faith was crumbling, my trust in the church leadership was disappearing rapidly down some sinkhole. I was kind of realizing that the church wasn't what I'd always been led to believe it was. And I was very clear with people that I was talking to back then that had I known absolutely everything I know now about the church and the truth and everything around how the church feel about gay people, how the church have always felt and experienced and treated black people, how women were feeling in the church, a lot of the kind of truth claims of the church. Had I known all of that, I would never have joined this church. If somebody had come along to me and said, would you like to join a club where you will be a member and everybody will love you and look after you and you'll have loads of contact and you won't need to have many friends outside this club because you'll get on really, really well together? We didn't used to let black people join the whole of the club. They had their own part of it they could join, but we let them have all of it now. We still don't really want gay people, so they can come along if they have to, but we don't want them to talk about being gay, and we don't want to have any recognition that they're gay, and we're certainly not going to let them get married or show photos of their girlfriend or boyfriend or discuss that. But they can come along if they have to. And you've got to pay 10% of everything you earn to be a member of this club. And you've got to promise to be loyal to the leadership and not criticise and do all these things. And these are all the rules you've got to follow. If somebody had come along and said that to me, I'd have said, I don't want to join that club. I don't want to join a club where I've got to kind of do all of that and where I've got to be super, well, I can't even criticise something, even if I think what the leaders are doing is wrong. And I've got to promise to obey the leaders, even if I don't think what they're doing is right. No, I don't want to join that club. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, would I have ever joined the church? No, I would not have done. But I did. And the fact is I joined it. And in saying I wouldn't have joined it, I also want to recognise now that I have had some fantastic moments in this church. I've made some incredible friends. I'd quite like to know where most of them are now, because since I've become quite actively involved in safeguarding and since I've been quite more openly critical about the church, I'd quite like to know where all these friends have disappeared off to, but I'm sure they're there somewhere. But I've had some fantastic times in this church. I think some of the people are some of the best people I've ever met. They're fabulous people. I've learned skills, talents, opportunities. There's been some really, really good times and experiences and moments. The problem is, good times and experiences and moments, when they come at a personal cost of who you are as a person, and when they come at a cost of everything you personally believe and hold on to as a value base and as integrity, you can still recognise, yeah, there's been good stuff, but actually it's not enough for me to any longer say, I want to lend my name to confer any legitimacy upon this church at this moment in time.
We're going to dive into that a little bit more deeply about some of the specifics about that just shortly. So, because I know that there's a lot that you want to say there, but from sort of from my perspective, Peter's perspective, the rest of the Brit Vengers gang, the podcasting crew, we've met someone who, it's evolved that actually worship for you. You would be walking, hiking, you're up a mountain when people are, in church, and you are living your best ex-Mormon life, but you're still a Mormon. It was, it was just so, it was such a great way, I thought, to be a member of the church, that you could choose how you wanted to do it. I really love that you just decided to own that.
And I think I did. I think I got to the point where I decided that the church, that I was no longer dependent upon the church to tell me what my relationship with God could look like.
Mm,
And I no longer needed the church to tell me whether I was worthy or not worthy. And I hate that expression, even as I say it. It
right.
made me all the icks in the world come up as I say that word. But I got to, I didn't need that. I didn't need validation from the church as to who I was as a person, or how my relationship with God could look in the future as a person, or how I could live my life. So I would quite happily go off hiking, walking, doing whatever I was off doing on a Sunday, doing whatever I wanted to do, living my life the way I wanted to live it, and go to church and accept a calling and do those things as well. Because as far as I was concerned, the church lacked the power and authority to tell me what I could and couldn't do. And that's not,
Now,
and even with, as I say
yeah,
that, I still want to go back to this. There's still, I hung on because there were still good things around, and to the potential for good that I can see in the church and in the members of the
right.
church, and the
Yeah.
and all the church has to offer.
Now, this kind of, I think for me, summed up what Mormonism, or what my friend's Mormonism looked like looking in. Because, whenever we would be, we're all up super late at night, and Nemo the Mormons having a panel, and, we're sort of saying, right, yeah, we'll be available for this one. And so we'd be talking about, right, so this conference, are you going to be where are you going to be watching it? And Sarah's like, I'm camping. I'm out of I am going away. And it was just something that you didn't have to explain. And
Yeah.
we're like, well, you can just do that. Like, there wasn't any wrestling with it. It's like, yeah, I'm off. And but then whenever you did those panels, whenever you would come back and sort of say, okay, I'm going to watch this. It hurts me. I'm dreading what particular people might say that might really cause a lot of pain. You would be so hurt by it. And you've been living a great life, and you would be coming back into sort of the harmful Mormonism, the hurtful Mormonism, the one that causes wounds. By doing something like watching conference, with people who are, who are sort of trying to find salient stuff, trying to, with that attitude that you have of finding the good, and yes, critiquing where it needs to be done. And like I say, I loved how you did it, and then to see how you would be pulled in different ways. I think in this space, we're going to sort of move to talk about all of the safeguarding work that, if you in the audience, if you've seen this journey, Sara gets, again, she'll go in a huff in a moment, but Sara is the driving force behind this work, and she can say whatever she likes, but that is the fact. And not only has Sara effected such huge change, it's been an honour to be her co-pilot. It's been an honour to learn so much from her. The miracles happened. You were able to tell the rest of the Brit Vengers. Sara broke the news. Hey, we're getting safeguarding. We're finally we're getting through. So things are happening, and we were sort of cheering, and it was so wonderful. We've got some fantastic videos and pictures of those moments behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Did you anticipate when that announcement was made, and it was covered in the Salt Lake Tribune? It was covered in media,
It,
across the
well,
world.
yeah. ABC
Did
News
you
in
have,
America covered it.
yeah,
Salt Lake Tribune covered it. Mormon Land covered it. There was kind of a lot of
right.
media coverage of it in America, certainly in the
Now,
heart of Mormonism.
yeah, and it occurs to me that, I mean, we kind of knew this at the time as well, but for particular reasons, and Sara will go into this, Sara couldn't really well, Sara wouldn't. You've all met her. She doesn't like it anyway. Sara wasn't given any real credit for being that driving force. Sara wasn't given any credit. Sara was a driving force behind it. We both made it very clear that there were active people in the church, really good people in leadership positions in the church who were getting behind it and getting it through, who would also agree that the driving force behind that was Sara. They can't say it, but you know that was absolutely the case, and it's great to be able to properly say that now, because I think we tried to sort of be very tactful about it. So question one, why did you have to be so tactful? Why couldn't you just say, look, I am the only woman in the church who has, in recent times, we're talking about Emma Smith, who got a policy in place because she was making some complaints. You and Emma Smith, you both got policies in place because you were complaining about something being not good enough, and this was way more important than tobacco on the floor.
Okay, just ever such a quick recap. I doubt there's anyone who hasn't heard this is listening, but it was about asking the church to undertake background checks, DBS checks, far greater safeguarding, and take safeguarding far more seriously, that we were pushing the church to do. And they finally, after about 18 months, agreed that they would do everything we were asking them to do, which was superb. And we've got more about that, later. What did you ask, Jane?
Why couldn't you talk publicly about your role?
Yeah. Right. This is being 100% clear why I couldn't talk very, very openly about absolutely everything that I was doing and saying, is because we have a church that are paranoid, that are fearful of being seen as being influenced by grassroots members, that didn't want to be seen that there was anything around an activist narrative attached to safeguarding at all. And in fact, I was told that very clearly. The church are very unhappy that there is an activist narrative around this safeguarding, and they don't want that. They don't want that to be seen. And I think that comes from the fact that the church place a high value on control. They place a high value on top-down leadership. This is a top-down organisation. Leadership comes from the top and pushes right the way down to the bottom. If people in this church are to start saying from the grassroots, this is not acceptable, we are not prepared to live this policy or practice anymore, and we expect you to do something about this as a church, then the entire senior leadership and structure of the church start to lose their power, and they start to lose their control. And we have a church that I believe as an institution suffers from institutional trauma, and they suffer from institutional paranoia and anxiety, and they fear losing their control over the membership if they are to be seen to engage in activism or narratives of advocacy and campaigning in any way. Therefore, they tend to come down quite hard and quite heavy on anybody who travels that route, as we've seen with excommunications and punishing people traveling that route. That was something that Jane and I...
Yeah, you weren't worried about that though, right?
No, we discussed it at huge, great length before we started this campaign. We actually 100% anticipated that before we got to the end of the safeguarding journey, they'd have excommunicated us. We actually totally expected that. But it was a price we were prepared to pay, because we thought if we have to exchange our church membership for the safeguarding of one single child on one single incident, we will do it in a heartbeat. And our Britventure colleagues were so totally behind it. Yeah, if we have to also exchange our membership for that, we will do that. Yeah. So that was kind of a fundamental bit. It was just like, do you know what? Seriously, we're doing it anyway. We're going to do what we do. You have to do what you have to do. But this isn't something we're going to walk away from. This is a hill we'll die on, because we're not walking away from it. Because we felt so strongly. And I was just going to say, we felt so strongly because of the extent of harm and the number of people we were talking to and the level of harm that we'd seen. That's why we felt so strongly about it.
Let me just push that a little bit more, because so we know what your fears weren't. We know also you're extremely modest, and you wouldn't have said, yeah, hey, look what I did. It's just not who you are. We also wanted to really emphasize the role of working across the active Mormon and ex-Mormon spectrum. We wanted to demonstrate what that looked like. But the other, and I think this is the main thing, what was it that you were afraid would happen if you gave an insight into what happens?
Our greatest fear was, and still is, our greatest fear is that the church would rather walk away from any safeguarding or any implementation of good safeguarding policies, practices, procedures, and activity, that they would rather walk away and shut the door on all of that and allow harm to continue than be seen to have made changes because it was pushed by individual members. And that was our greatest concern.
Do you think that was likely?
I thought it was highly likely. I believe it was very likely at the time. What I would say now is I believe the church are too far down the route of background checks to be able to back away from that now. They would have absolutely zero credibility anywhere in the world if they did that. So I think they would dare back away from it now. The safeguarding policies and procedures that are in place, they won't back away. They won't, because they've got too much to lose. So I think we can truly say that actually, hang on a minute, they're not going to back away from that now. But that was our greatest fear, that they would. And there are still things that the church are doing that we've asked them to do, that we've spent hours engineering, setting up, bringing about to pass, that I still fear they will cease and stop, that would be detrimental to the well-being of the most vulnerable people in this community if we spoke very openly about some of those things. So I suppose there is still a little bit of me, whereas I'm saying I don't talk about anything and everything, there's a kind of little bit of me thinking,
still there.
We don't want the church to kind of take their frustration and their fear and their anger out on the most vulnerable. They can't around DBS checks now, and around safeguarding online training, and around safeguarding specialists now. They can't. It's too late.
So you then are extended a calling. Part of the new safeguarding measures that the church implemented was that every stake was going to have a stake safeguarding specialist. We were having a field day about this. Sarah, one, tell us how you felt about being extended a calling in the church that you just didn't want to be there on a Sunday.
That was very probably. Well, okay, first of all, what I'm going to say about the safeguarding specialist calling, seeing as we're kind of we're seen as just arrogance is going to be top of the list tonight. It was a calling that we recommended. We wrote the job description for the calling. We recommended
Sorry, who wrote the job description for the calling? Because it was me.
So wrote the job description for the calling, spoke about what the calling could look like, spoke about the benefits of that calling, and the church accepted it. It was one of the policies, one of the requests, one of the things that we'd asked the church to do, and they did. They accepted it. Then the church, we had a stake president who I can honestly say has been a very influential stake president on me, because I actually knew that he cared more about individuals and people than he did anything else. People mattered more to him than what a program said or what anything else said. It was like, I care about people. And I knew that he genuinely loved me, genuinely cared about me. And I think I drove the poor guy crazy, but he was always extraordinarily gracious and kind to me. And he never sort of did anything or said anything that was kind of difficult. He was brilliant. And anyway, he extended a calling as safeguarding specialist to me. And because I knew I could work with him, because I trusted him, I had confidence in him, because I knew he would listen to what I wanted to say. So I kind of thought, okay, I'm not kind of 100% active at church. I go sometimes, but I don't go all the time. But I accepted the calling. And I think everybody just kind of glossed over the fact that I didn't go to church all the time, very frequently. At that time, I was going to church maybe once or twice a month. I was actually attending church kind of on and off, not regularly, but once, twice a month maybe. That dropped down to about once a month after a while, and then filtered out to zilch. But yeah, so I accepted that calling, and I was the first person actually in the UK to be extended that calling, to be set apart for that calling. And actually, the setting apart is worth mentioning, because Nemo the Mormon, who's our friend and he's lovely and we love him, he came to church with me on the Sunday morning that I was going to be sustained and set apart, because he wanted to be there, because he'd been part of this safeguarding talking. He'd we'd always tease him that he was our unpaid intern. If we wanted research doing or we wanted documents typed and we hadn't got time to type a spreadsheet with 350 names and addresses on and stuff like that, our unpaid intern did it for us. So he's been great, fantastic part of this journey and supporting us, as has Peter Bleakley and Ruth Heath and others. So he came to church with me on that Sunday morning when I was set apart. And I asked the High Counsellor who'd been sent to Redditch to kind of do the business on that day, I said, can my friend, and he knew Dougie, he'd been Dougie's Young Men's president, I think it was. He knew Doug, he knew him well, knew he was an at the moment. I said, can he stand in a circle and join in with us? I said, because he's my friend and that would be really important. And he was very happy for that. He was happy to agree that. And it was good because it meant I had somebody that I knew as a friend that was kind of there with me, joining in, standing in the circle when I was set apart. But that didn't go down very well, actually, I have to say. The church didn't like that.
Yeah, and we've talked about that in other podcasts.
Yeah, we don't need to go into that.
But I've been having a look because I'm trying to find this this particular email that we had been looking at this week. That safeguarding specialist role, you had concerns about it. You were actually quite worried about particular aspects of the role, and I'm actually struggling to find the email that you sent. Can you remember off the top of your head what were the concerns that you were having? And this was literally
some of the concerns I had about the safeguarding calling were, one, that state presidents and bishops, so the vast majority, particularly state presidents, as I was responsible for extending the call, wouldn't recognise that they needed to actively seek out people for their safeguarding experience, knowledge and skills rather than their Mormon CV. And I thought they're going to go to people with a really good Mormon CV that are Molly Mormon, righteous, good, doing all this, rather than thinking, who do we have in our stake who really understands safeguarding because of their profession and their career. So I was concerned we wouldn't get the right people. I was also concerned that the safeguarding role would be diluted into nothing more than admin, so that you would just simply be sitting there filling in forms and doing admin work. And I was really concerned that it would, more than, and this continues to be a concern, is that the calling itself will make it look as if the church are doing a lot more for safeguarding than they really are. That the church can say, we've got 350 safeguarding specialists in the UK that work with their church leaders to ensure safeguarding is a priority in our church. And that actually sounds, to a person who knows nothing about the calling and nothing about the church, that sounds fantastic. Oh, you've got somebody in every single area of your church is doing this. That is fantastic. That's really good. The reality is what they've actually got is a mismatch of people, some who may know quite a lot and be very confident about safeguarding, and some who might be very able to discuss with church leaders and say, I think we should be doing this, or have you thought about this, and might be confident enough to have those discussions. And stake presidents and leaders that are knowledgeable and skilled and in tune enough to actually listen and have that debate. But the reality is, in a lot of areas, you've got people that actually don't know anything about safeguarding at all, that are just simply trying to work their way through how to fill admin forms in. And it has evolved into largely an admin role. Now, this is where I'm just going to say how things are. Some state presidents will be really good at calling a safeguarding specialist and saying, hey, I'm concerned about something. Can I just have a talk with you about it? And kind of have a little bit of a discussion about a situation I might be worried or concerned about. Some may be confident enough to say to people, if you've got a safeguarding question or concern, talk to the safeguarding specialist. Some state presidents will be able to do that. Some will not have a clue and will simply be just ignoring the safeguarding specialist and leaving them to simply do the paperwork around DBS checks and do an audit to make sure everyone's got a DBS check, and would not be taking it any more seriously. I did email one of the lawyers for the church, and I did say, what are your plans about the safeguarding calling? Are you going to try and extend this calling so that the stake presidents really have expertise that they can call upon, that they can discuss safeguarding concerns within the stake with, so that they can come up with plans around how to manage that and what to do in a really meaningful way? And was told quite clearly, no, we're not going to do that. There's no plans to do that at all.
Would you
So,
mind if I jump in at this point, because I want to just I'm going to just direct everyone to previous podcasts over the past few years that where Sarah's talked about her role as a safeguarding specialist, talked about the importance of building relationships. She's taken it very, very seriously. She has been the cheerleader for this process and has only inwardly. There have been these concerns about roles being diluted, about acceptable training. Can you see? My worry and Sarah's worry had been, while that's currently, as Sarah's been explaining what the role has evolved into, I would suggest it had never really, it maybe had evolved for you because you had this exceptionally good relationship where there was a real relationship of trust there.
yeah.
You have the expertise, you have the knowledge, you can also, and we're not just talking about the church procedures and things and someone saying, hey, we need to do better here. It's also the DBS process, the organization that actually issues these and issues this information to tell you if someone has anything that would bar them from working with vulnerable groups. To be able to challenge them and say, look, you're getting this wrong. You've not done this properly, and here's what you need to do. You've also challenged lawyers about it. There's been you've done nothing but work tirelessly within this calling. The thing is, how you've been functioning in this calling has not been what the handbook explicitly says. And what the handbook is explicitly saying is it's an admin role. And when you've asked for clarity and look, are you going to do anything with this? Are we going to get some more here? No, they don't. The church doesn't want safeguarding specialists to be anywhere near safeguarding. It's there. You used the phrase, Sarah, just last night. Effectively, it's a safeguarding clerk. It's a paperwork role. So all you're doing is going through to make sure that everybody has got up to date DBS checks. If they haven't, give them a nudge, and that's been it. Now, what you have been able to do with a supportive stake president is you've been able to, within your stake, do really bloody good training, and you've been able to do a couple of rounds of that.
That has been absolutely meaningful and beneficial and incredibly useful. And people have come to talk to me about their own experiences around abuse and safeguarding in the church. They've come to talk about concerns they've got about how things are functioning and not functioning. But that being able to do that training has been really important. So yes, I was able to do a training session on grooming, a training session around how the culture of the church aids and abets abuse, training around looking at what is safeguarding and why do we need to do it in our church, and let's have a look at some scenarios and how should we respond and what should we be doing. Now that is where the relationship and the ability of a stake president to understand safeguarding, to have it as a top priority, is absolutely critical. And if you have a stake president that thinks safeguarding is a little bit of a faff and a little bit of a paper process and a little bit, don't really need to worry about that too much, do we really? It's just a policy and we just have to make sure we've covered it. And they see safeguarding in that light, then you're not actually going to really get the absolute best for the most vulnerable members of the church that is necessary and is needed.
And when you would deliver that training, every now and again, now for the most part, you would go and it would be fantastic. You would feel that you actually, I could make this work. There's a place for me in this church. I can do this, and it's making a meaningful difference.
Oh, I know.
People were saying they could feel the spirit. There was lots and lots of great feedback. Every now and again, you would be able to identify, I'm really concerned about this. You would, there were worries you were identifying too. What about you? Because this role as a safeguarding specialist, and we're about to sort of, I think we're getting almost to throwing grenades time here. This role as a safeguarding specialist has tied you to a church that you were struggling to see anything positive about. How was that for you?
Okay, first of all, I just want to say something before we talk about that. And it has been harder and harder and harder for me as time has gone on to stick around with this. But when you said about throwing grenades, I just want to offer a reassurance to anyone who might be listening, who might be scared that we're going to say something that would get them in trouble. We're not. If you are one of the many people in this country that was serving as a bishop or a stake president or in any other capacity in this church, and you spoke to us about various things, we are not about to blow that. But trust me, we're not going to do that. And if you are a victim that has shared information with us, either about known offenders in the congregation or within the church, or about your own abuse, we are absolutely not about to throw grenades and blow that up in the air.
Absolutely.
So I just want to make that absolutely clear. So don't anybody be sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, you're not going to say I did this, are you? You're not going to say I did that, are you? No, we're not. And we're absolutely not about to expose anything that victims have told us.
Oh, yes, no, absolutely. No, but there might be a couple of people who might feel uncomfortable after
they might be people that have incurred the displeasure of 21st Century Saints, not people that have been fantastic. I hasten to add.
Absolutely. So you're seeing people who every now and again there'll be a concern. What would you do with that when you had to raise any concerns? And then talk to me about, sort of moving on from that. What was this role doing, and how were you handling this role, tethering you to a church that you were finding increasingly there was
I think
was a struggle?
Quite a long time ago, I had reached a point where I felt there was no place for me at church. I didn't fit. It wasn't something that I needed in my life anymore, that I could have the spiritual journey with God that I needed to have outside of the church. I didn't fit, I didn't belong. And that's not because people are horrible to me. I want to hasten to add that. So that anybody thinking, well, I was always nice to you, because this isn't about how people treat me. It's how the institution behaves and how the institution operates, not individual people. So I was finding it increasingly difficult and struggling to stay. And every time I thought, I can't do this anymore, then I would do something like deliver a safeguarding training session, and it would suck me straight back into thinking, I can actually make a difference. I can stick around. I can listen to this person's pain. I can help that bishop understand why we're doing safeguarding. I can sit and talk to that person who's worried about what they say to somebody who's told them they've been abused. I can do this. There's something I can do. So every time I got close to thinking I'm leaving, I'm quitting, I'm not doing it, something would pull me back in that would make me think, there is something I can offer. There's something I can do that can make a difference. And I'll stay while I have that to offer. And while I can do that, I'll stay and I'll do it.
So for example, you talked to, we had a conversation, you talked about a bishop who, after a training session, because we've just said we're not naming and shaming anyone in particular, until I get to the part where I name and shame a couple of individuals. But hey, don't worry, it's all good. It's nothing people need to if you've spoken to us in confidence, it's good. But things like this, a bishop who felt, I can't do this. This is a lot. I don't know if I have the resources to do that. I'm overwhelmed. What do I do?
Yeah.
How are you responding to that?
And I think being able to talk about helping them understand the process, the procedure, understanding why it mattered so much, and understanding that they
Right,
weren't alone in it. You don't have to have these conversations that they're difficult. You give
right,
this to the state president because he's there to carry your burden, Bishop. So you don't need to do this on your own.
right.
And actually, you've just told me you don't know why we're having to do all this safeguarding in the church because it's a little bit of a faff and it's a bit of a lot of stuff, isn't it? I don't know why we need to change all this. Let me give
Mhm.
you some real life examples of people in this church that have been hurt and abused, and this is why we're doing it. It's not so we can tick a box, it's not so we can look good, it's so that we can say this person has previously been convicted of sexual abuse of a child. This person cannot be serving in these callings, and you do not know that unless you do a DBS check. That's why we're doing it. This victim has been really hurt by abuse that happened to them. It's destroyed their faith, their confidence, their trust. It's impacted on every aspect of their life. And actually, we can do better as a church. So let's start doing better. And being able to have those conversations one to one was really important. There were huge concerns that are flagged up sometimes, and I'm actually naming and shaming. I'm going to be quite clear about this. This happened after there was a change in state presidency, and the relationships never quite got off the ground, and that's fair enough. From not every state president is going to
Right.
understand priorities, and not everybody's
Yep.
going to have a great relationship with me, even though I think I'm utterly fantastic. Not everyone's going to have a great relationship with me, and all the rest of it. That's fair enough. But I delivered a training session to a ward, and there was a sister in that room who initially, at the very beginning of the training, I thought, oh, good, this is going to be really hard. She's disagreeing with everything I say. She's rolling her eyes, huffing and puffing. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be hard. And then I realised what was happening. It was the exact opposite. The fact that we were talking about actual cases of abuse and scenarios was hurting her. It was triggering something in her that was painful and hurting. And I recognised that. I thought, do you know what? I thought I'm being a bit slow on the uptake here. How many times have I talked to people around safeguarding and it's triggered something in their own experiences that's been difficult for them? So I was really concerned about this sister that had been clearly upset and distressed when we were talking about safeguarding, really clearly, and had a kind of made a few comments, and I'd responded to them. I don't want to be too
Well,
I don't want
can
to
I
go into too much detail, but I tried
yeah,
very hard
Sarah,
to get through
could
to her
I
bishop.
just say though, when you I don't think there is anyone else, because having had a conversation about, as we're preparing for the show, I don't think anyone in the room would have recognized this is someone who's been triggered, this is someone who's upset.
Yeah,
What it would have looked like is, those initial feelings of, what is her problem? This is
yeah,
she just doesn't want to hear
absolutely.
it. She's tuned out.
But it wasn't.
You were perfectly positioned
Yeah, it
to be
wasn't.
able to
And
recognize it, and you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
and at one point she did actually say that it's really hard sitting here listening to this, but I've got to stay, haven't I? I'm not allowed to leave. And I said, you'd absolutely leave if you want to leave. If you don't want to do this tonight, you leave. That is okay. Anyway, because I was concerned about the effect this had had on her emotionally, and this is what really worries me about how the church are doing this safeguarding program. They're not putting the groundwork in where it matters. And I'll expand on that in a moment. I tried to speak to this person's bishop. I sent a text message, two answer phone messages, a couple of text messages I think I sent the same night, and said, really need to speak to you about this because I'm really worried that she's hurt and needs somebody to support her. Didn't really get anywhere. Few months, still got nowhere. Spoke to the new stake president and said, really worried about this. Oh, okay, I'll speak to the bishop. Bishop got back to me that time and said, oh, it's okay, I've had a word with her. And she said the training was fine, there was no problem. And I thought, you haven't understood what I told you. What I was telling you was she was distressed by the training. I wasn't asking you to find out if she enjoyed it, if she liked it, if she understood it. I'm asking you, were you okay? We've had some feedback to say that you looked as though you were struggling and upset and this was difficult for you. Is there somebody that you would like us to support you? We can refer you to family services. We can offer support. Excuse my Alexa. Sorry, folks. Alexa's shouting in the background. Is there anything that we can do to support you? But the trouble is, because safeguarding, if it isn't understood, people don't actually get that
Right.
that is an issue. And so what concerns me is bishops and branch presidents and state presidents and Uncle Tom Cobley and all are interviewing people for callings for children and youth and other callings where they're required to watch the church online safeguarding training program, and simply saying to people, right, you need to watch this 15-minute online video and you need to do the training. Well, first of all, it's not training, it's just very, very basic. These are the policies, this is what you need to do. It's very, very basic. But it's better than absolutely nothing, but it's too basic to be called training. Now, they're telling people to go and do this online, in isolation, on their own. That's not training. Because first of all, if somebody has been abused, you're telling them to go and sit and listen to a video on their own that's going to talk about what to do if you're abused.
Right.
Or what you do if you think somebody's being abused. That's painful, difficult stuff that can trigger and push buttons for people. And you're having no discussion with people about what the content of the training is, the fact that sometimes this training can push buttons and it can trigger uncomfortable, difficult feelings. If there's any problems, if you're experiencing any difficulties, this is what we can do to support. Talk to this person, safeguarding specialist, let's have a think together. There's no kind of preparation for what people are doing. It's just go do the training without
Right.
any proper, really good preparation for it. And the other bit is because people are doing it in isolation, there's nobody to help them think through questions or concerns or thoughts they might have about anything. It's just not, as I say, it's better than nothing. But I mean, with the resources this church have got at its disposal, £350 billion, and they can't even produce a fantastic safeguarding training program. Come
Well,
on, there's something wrong here.
You're right, and to sort of, not only is this training insufficient, any additional training that's happened since safeguarding has been brought in the UK in the form that it has been, I believe is insufficient, and it's a story for another day, I suppose. But when you're reporting concerns, and it's as simple as there's actually not much for you to do other than have a conversation, make sure that this is someone who's feeling supported. She might not even know how she's feeling and what's triggered it. And, but certainly if this is happening in this setting, she needs to be able to at least know that there's...
Be honest, that was one time when I desperately wished that we'd had a bishop and stake president that really understood.
Right.
Really, and actually the previous stake president would have got it. I wouldn't have had to go into great detail. He'd have got it and he'd have had the conversation that needed to take place. Now, this isn't, and it probably sounds as though this is totally bashing the current stake president. Okay, sorry folks if that's how it comes across. But the reality is the church are letting these stake presidents down.
Yes.
They're calling people, they're chucking them into a position where they're responsible for all of this. When if it hasn't been their life experience, if they haven't ever come across this before in their life, we are asking far too much of them to expect them to be able to be a plumber during their weekday job and then suddenly be able to deal with things around abuse and safeguarding on a Sunday and at church. So yes, it might seem that we're criticising the bishops and the stake presidents, but actually my criticism isn't of those people, because for the vast majority, they are very, very good men that genuinely want to do the best and genuinely care about what they're doing. There's exceptions, but for the vast majority. The reality is the criticism is for the church leadership that have so little concern and respect for the stake presidents and bishops and the individual members that they do not put the resources into providing strong, robust, adequate training for them before they let them start this role. They should be doing it before, and it's not difficult.
Yes,
it's not
and
difficult.
It isn't accountability focused. That if this, now we think about this incident of someone being potentially re-traumatized. There are instances like that where you've had concerns that haven't been followed up, that haven't been dealt with urgently. Now, what we can say is, for example, the church lawyer that we tend to go to directly when there's something appropriate that we need him to act on. And that could look like a lot of different things. He acts swiftly, and it's great. You guys doing a fantastic job. That said, everyone is not like that. And while we want to be very clear that for the most part, yes, the church, it's full of good people doing their best, it's also really bloody not good enough whenever someone's trying to report safeguarding concerns and it's on you, mate, and you're choosing to either just not get back at all, or to minimize it, or to or to shut you out of a discussion that, you know, well, hold on, I need to know what's actually happened here. Is this being dealt with? Is someone not just, the church know about it? Well, that's all very well, but does the safeguarding board know about it? Is this person receiving support? Because you might know. But Sara's the safeguarding specialist. If she doesn't know, then what choice is there?
But if safeguarding specialists aren't being brought into these training sessions and these discussions and working as a real partner with their state president, then actually that's not going to happen anyway. Mormon Civil War, Peter Bleakley has just made a fantastic comment here. He said about much more detailed safeguarding protocols need to be in the handbook. But he's also said about depending on leadership roulette, and that's the problem we've got. So much of this church depends on leadership roulette, so very, very much leadership roulette. Who is the leader? Is the leader somebody who genuinely loves, genuinely cares, genuinely includes, and wants the church to be a better place? Has the leader got some kind of ability and courage to kind of speak up and say when things aren't right? Has the leader got the commitment to work with the church to kind of bring about the very best place it can possibly be? Have we got leaders that can work with members that might be doubting, that might have questions, that might have concerns, that might be struggling? And leadership roulette is absolutely critical. If you've got a good leader, you'll get good safeguarding. If you haven't, you won't.
Right. Sara, we're going to sort of slightly minimize the safeguarding part of this discussion so that we can. She hates talking about herself. See, whenever I will say, "Hey, Sara, do you want to talk about your feelings?" and she gets all about it. You know, truly, and it's glorious to behold. All of the Avengers don't do feelings. So it's wonderful to watch how annoyed they get when we do this. Sara, it's very leading questions so that I can get you to sort of share a couple of specifics. You're in this calling. You don't want to be at church. You're bound to the church in this calling. You feel that if you leave it, that you might not be able to help in the ways that you want to be able to help. You might not get a sense.
That's perfectly put. That is actually, Jane, that is perfectly put. That's exactly how it was for me. If I leave this church now, I can't help with safeguarding. Yeah.
Right. So therefore, that's your thought process then. If you leave the church, you were thinking about so that was on your radar, the possibility of
I need to stay because of the conversations I need to have. And at that point we were still, all the way through this, we've had victims reaching out to us over and over again, and I kind of thought, if I leave, I've got no one in the church I can take this to if it needs to go back to somebody in church for action or for support or something. So it's kind of like, I'm going to have to stay. So I've kind of stayed, but it's had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, but
and interestingly as well, just to chuck it out there, interestingly, throughout all of this, we've been far too Mormon for some people and nowhere near Mormon enough for other people. And somewhere amongst this, the fact that we're people carrying quite a big weight and trying to do the very best that we could with it, that it was never right. There was very few people it was ever right for. It's been really difficult.
And and we've learned a lot, you know, along the way. I don't think I would go back to the beginning and use my personal Facebook for or my personal email address for a lot of this work we're doing, because literally the phone can go ping all night, middle of the night, and it's just safeguarding issue after safeguarding issue, and it's very, very difficult to take yourself out of that headspace. And we have to be able to. Now, we do have really good supports and things that we work with organizations that support us wonderfully well. So please don't, that's not your cue to not talk to us about things.
Absolutely not.
But we've had to learn boundaries.
We deal with it. We sort our boundaries out. We deal with our emotions. We deal with it. But I have found staying engaged with the church increasingly difficult over time.
You got to a point, especially when you would go on holiday. And I'm thinking about one of the first out of office emails that you set up, that was perhaps a little bit of a sign that you weren't loving this calling, right? I mean, you were doing it. Let me just re-emphasize, the reason that I always get Sara to talk about her credentials at the beginning is because you have someone who is so highly trained, has got so much information, is so, is in the cutting edge of this work, knows what she's talking about, and she's doing an admin role, and she is not complaining. Didn't complain once. You're more than happy to do it if that's what makes the difference, if that's what I'm needed to do, then and that's how she viewed it. Now, I would be hacked off because the ward clerks could be doing it just as easily. There's nothing in that role that could be done by a clerk.
I mean, there was the time, don't forget, when actually it was more meaningful because there was training being delivered, and I was able to give safeguarding talks
right, which
in
is
church, and so there was. Do you know what I mean? So that's right. But leadership roulette.
And what also you found is that you would perhaps sometimes have to draft in someone with a penis to send an email because
100%
listening to a woman saying this.
And what I will honestly say is the times that I'd be trying to get a bit of information from bishops, ward clerks, people within the church, and I'd email, I'd phone, I'd message, I'd email. Nothing. And then I turned around to this absolutely gorgeously wonderful, fantastic exec sec and said, "Can you send this email for me?" Bang, answer the same day, without fail, every single time. Ignore. But as soon as it came, it was like, "Oh yeah, here's the information you want." And I sit there, and I mean, I think he was kind of a bit embarrassed about it, really. And I just thought, and I said, "You know what? I'm just so grateful that I write the email, you send it, and everyone then responds." But it's actually ridiculous, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous.
Tell them what you did to me on your very first out.
What I did to you?
What she did. I think she's probably blanked part of this out. Tell me what you did.
I think it was wonderful. I went on holiday for a week, and I decided that I didn't want to be disturbed with safeguarding of any shape or form or another while I was away on holiday for a week. So I put an out of office message saying that I'd gone away and I was reflecting and pondering and doing whatever else it was I was doing, and put this message in the email and in the out of office return so people would get it. And then I put a thing like, "If you're contacting me from the agency that I do training with, then kind of contact this person. If you're contacting me from Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and your query is anything to do with safeguarding, please contact Jane Christie of 21st Century Saints." I don't know why you moaned about it. It was quite reasonable. I don't know why you moaned about it. It was perfectly reasonable.
She not only gave them all my personal email address,
perfectly reasonable,
in her bounce back, but can you imagine the poor little bishops and clerks?
I know. I did feel sorry for them, actually.
Stake,
I did feel sorry for them.
Who are like, who is this Jane person and what is 21st Century Saints?
Well, now you see, now I'm going to go back a bit on this. When I first started doing my Gmail address. I only use my Gmail account for church safeguarding and my employed training safeguarding. That is the only things my Gmail account gets used for. It doesn't get used for anything else ever. Now, I've even lost the track of where I was going with that.
She's
but
trying
the
to
thing is,
excuse her meanness.
absolutely,
Of the utter
absolutely,
cruelty of doing that to me, so she could take a holiday. But the point is, you were done. You were.
I'd had enough, and at that point,
Yeah,
I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And it was really interesting how people were talking amongst themselves about, have you seen her email address? Because a couple of people mentioned it to me. You said people keep raising your email address. I thought, oh, we'll go over it. Now, when I first started the safeguarding calling, I actually, on my Gmail account, I have 21st Century Saints, and we've got our little signature and our little logo and our little 21st Century Saints. So this is who we are, and it's on my Gmail signature. Just because I didn't want to give the church any reason to stop working with me over safeguarding and to actually make any accusations that we were trying to be controversial or difficult or anything like that, I took that Gmail, that 21st Century Saints signature off every email I sent until the last couple of months when I've been so fed up with people, I've left it on there. But I took it off every single time because I didn't want people to think that this was about 21st Century Saints. I went and delivered training and listened to people saying, it's amazing, isn't it, that we have a church where the prophet has decided we need to do DBS checks and safeguarding checks. Isn't it wonderful that that's happened? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, it'd be wonderful if that was what's happened, and said absolutely nothing. And I can honestly say that I never once mentioned anything about my role in this safeguarding and the changes that had come into the church or the work I'd done for 21st Century Saints. I never once mentioned that to anyone in the state. Now, I found out a few months ago that kind of most people knew anyway, but I didn't know that. I genuinely didn't know that because I hadn't told anyone.
So we're going to, just because I'm conscious of time. We're going to move forward a little bit. Sara, you tried. What was this? Maybe a year ago. Longer, 2 years ago, maybe.
I think it might have been 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago.
Sara planned to resign. Sara sent a letter.
I sent a letter. I did.
Her notice.
I sent a letter. I did.
Now, who does that? Most people, when they're planning to quit, they just say, hey, I'm quitting. Sara sends an email with a date 1 month in the future. I'm leaving on this date.
Well, I did. I said, I'm resigning from the church. This is why I'm resigning. I'm resigning my membership, and I want this resignation to take place as from the 31st of December. And I'm sure it's 2023, but I would have to double check that. Yeah. I want it to take place on that date because by that date, I will have finished the round of safeguarding training that I'm delivering. I will have got the DBS system set up and under control, and everything will be in a really good place for somebody else to take over. So I just need a couple of months to work on that. And then on this date, I want you to action my resignation. I did.
And your wonderful bishop, your wonderful stake president met with you, were incredibly supportive. She got pulled back in, which
I did.
Because it's Sara, and safeguarding means so much to Sara, and we've talked about why that is. What
I did.
You then got to the point where it became sort of critical mass. Now, the title of tonight is I Quit. That's actually part of the story. The first part is you and your safeguarding role. So your state president set up an appointment to meet with you. Tell me what you had planned to do, because you had an idea about what he was going to say. Talk to us about that, and then talk to us about what your plan was.
When I was going to resign.
Yeah. No, not whenever you're going to resign. So just a couple of weeks ago, your state president asked to
last week. It was only last week. It was actually a week ago today.
I know, it's just a lot's happened in that time.
Lots happened in the last week. Well, for quite a long time, I have been saying, and Jane's been the one that's had to listen to all my moans and groans for such a long time. But anyway, Jane has actually had many 1 o'clock in the morning telephone conversations about, I can't take this anymore. I've got to go. What am I going to do? We've had many of these conversations. And I'm going to mention this and then come back to it. The kind of absolute final straw with me, I can't do this anymore, was when Dallin H. Oakes was called President Provident, but we'll come to that in a moment. Yeah. Now, I was saying to Jane, I need out of this calling. I thought if they would just release me from this calling, I could walk away from the church, but I can't walk away until they release me, because I can't not feel I've given everything I can give to safeguarding. And I was thinking, just release me. Anyway, it wasn't happening. And then I said to Jane, I think I'm going to have to ask for a release. I said, I don't think it's going to happen any other way. I'm going to have to ask to be released. And then a week ago today, last Wednesday, I had a message that the state president wanted to talk to me. And because it was only 3 days before state conference, I thought, well, there's only one reason he's going to want to talk to me a few days before state conference, when we've only had one conversation since he was called to state president in March. And that conversation was in June, took about 20 minutes. I thought there's only one reason he's going to want to talk to me now, a few days before conference, and that's to tell me he's releasing me. And I kind of phoned Jane up and said, I think I'm about to get sacked or released or whatever. And indeed, that was the conversation that we had. So, yeah.
And you were very clear that if in the event that you didn't get that lucky,
I was going to ask for a release. I said to Jane, I said, if it doesn't, I said, if that isn't what he is asking me tonight, I said, I'm absolutely going to ask for a release, because I can't do this anymore. I need to be able to walk away. And I think I did say to you that I think I've done and given everything I can. I don't think I've got anything else left to give at this moment in time.
And so, one, you were clear that you wanted to do it in that same conversation, that if it didn't come up, you were going to bring it up that night. Second, we had, and it was sort of, I think, it was in the week before it. It was when you were sort of processing, right, well, this is likely what's going to happen, and you'd had this realization that actually, well, of course, you were still going to be able to do safeguarding work more broadly, that if anyone approached you, you're not getting any help just now. There's not a route within your stake to allow you to do that.
Well, I think the realization was nobody invited us to do safeguarding when we first started it.
Right.
And I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, nobody actually said to us, can you come and do some safeguarding advocacy, campaigning, activism, work, encouragement, whatever, with the church around safeguarding? Nobody ever asked us when we started this in August 2022 if we would come and do that. We kicked that door down. Figuratively and literally, we kicked the door down to get ourselves a seat at the table to talk about safeguarding. And every time they kicked us away from the table, we forced our way back to the table again. So it just kind of occurred to me, I thought, if we had to fight that hard to even have a say in this agenda, then I can walk away from this calling, walk away from the church, and still maintain some interest in what's happening around safeguarding, and still keep an eye on the ball and speak up for the most vulnerable people that need somebody to speak up for them.
Just as an aside to the Strengthening Church Membership Committee, Sara's stake president, any church lawyer, Andrew Ford, any of these people who are listening, can I just tell you, see, if you had to have asked Sara would obviously would have helped, but truthfully, if you had to have asked, what would have happened is we would have referred you to an organisation that would actually support you in a robust way with safeguarding. We would have said, no thanks, we have our own stuff to be going with, and there are organisations which are already set up and perfectly placed to do this. But because you weren't doing anything, we had to become pains in your ass. Therefore, we did.
Well,
now,
and it's worth mentioning this, before we started our safeguarding work with the church, we simply asked for one meeting with the person responsible for safeguarding in the church to share our concerns. And because we were not allowed that meeting, we were not allowed that discussion, that's when we went all out and thought, well, we've got nothing else to do then other than approach it this way.
Remind me, who was it? Who was it we wanted to have a meeting with, Sara?
It was the church lawyer that runs the abuse helpline. Was it Andrew Ford. And we just wanted
Oh, are
one
you saying
conversation. We wanted
all of
one
this could have been
conversation.
prevented?
Yeah. One
Ah,
conversation, and we wouldn't have done any of this because we'd have been able to hand
yes.
the information. We had at that time, we had case examples of people that had got
Mm,
convictions that had been called to work with children. We knew of people that were convicted offenders that were sitting in congregations and they were working with children. We knew of victims that had been hurt and harmed. We had case examples that we wanted to share, and we wanted to hand over policies, information, suggestions, ideas of what could be done, and link them with agencies that could have helped professionally. And because we were told we couldn't have that conversation, we thought, well, we've got nothing left to lose now. We're just going to have to do what we
right.
do.
Since his name has come up, let's just throw this out, because although we've alluded to it, we've never dug into this, and we're about to get to the big moment.
I would say
But
it's not
first of all,
his. I would only say it wasn't his
oh,
fault. We couldn't have the conversation with him because I don't think anyone ever told him we wanted to. So I would say
oh,
I don't think he had the chance to say no at that point because I don't think anyone ever told. Since then, that's different. But at that
she's
point, I
being
don't think
far
anyone
too
told him.
she's being far too gracious, because we invited him to have several
Oh
conversations.
yeah, that was
Anyway,
no, that was after. In fairness, that was
okay.
after.
One thing that you haven't been able to speak about, Andrew Ford. Andrew Ford. Sarah, tell me about Andrew Ford. So in the UK, we don't have Curtin McConkie. Andrew Ford's lawyer company. I
Yeah,
believe he's a conveyancing lawyer.
the,
No,
he's a family. He's a family lawyer. He's a family lawyer.
family.
He
What's his
Andrew.
role
Well,
with
he's a solicitor and he's responsible for manning the abuse
right?
helpline.
So the
His
helpline. What's his role with DBS checks in the UK? Please do
his
inform us.
his legal company have been given the contract for the church to do the kind of background, not the background checks, that's done by a company called UCheck, but to do all the preparation and to process all the DBS checks and to actually look at the information that comes back and decide what has to happen with it. And so his company have been given a contract to actually do all of the DBS background checks for the church, and we're also given along with family services, responsibility for training the state safeguarding specialists.
Okay, quick, just piece of housekeeping. One, Andrew Ford, we are sure is a complete darling. So before people who
100%. Everybody tells us that, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt
right.
it. Everyone, he's got a fantastic Mormon CV, an amazing Mormon CV.
Okay,
And I
Sarah,
don't doubt he
I'm
knows
going to mute you
legally.
in a second, right? We need to go through this very quickly now. Okay, this is so that this is super clear. Andrew Ford, lots of people. He's a very, very well-loved man. Andrew
Yep.
Ford, we have absolutely no issue with whatsoever, except we've tried to contact him a lot about safeguarding and he hasn't wanted to engage. Therefore, we have been assigned a darling, extremely sexy lawyer who we're much more comfortable with and he's much more comfortable with us. That's fantastic.
This is
a criticism not about Andrew Ford as a person who, as far as we are aware, is a, how would we phrase it in Mormon terms, an extremely righteous priesthood holder. Fantastic. When we have heard of how he's spoken to people about safeguarding, he comes across as being very kind, and
Yep.
that's it. We would say, from a professional point of view, the information and training that he has is insufficient for him to be able to offer robust support. In addition to that, he's a lawyer. There's a bit of a conflict of interest to contact a church lawyer if you need help with safeguarding.
Can we be really clear about this conflict of interest? Andrew Ford is a lawyer engaged and paid and funded by the church. He is the church is his client. There will be times when the well-being of a victim or the effective management of an offender or information around abuse is not in the best interests of the church. So there is a huge conflict between the church engaging somebody to be responsible for the abuse helpline, the first point of contact for all leaders in the country around abuse, to have access to all that information when actually the church is his client. So his legal responsibility has to be to the church as his client.
Absolutely, it does.
Unless he can explain it any other way, which I'd be really interested to listen to. If there's another explanation for that, I'd love to hear it.
Right. And he has to follow those procedures. This is why we can say the information in the handbook, Peter Bleakley points this out earlier on in the comments, the handbook explanations need to be much more defined. Yeah, we know, because he keeps sending us the same bloody thing. When there's an issue, we need to seek clarification about procedures. We get a copy and paste thing from the handbook, and very, very assertive, give us the information about who you're talking about, where this happened, which state, and no, Brother Ford, we will not be doing that, because you haven't demonstrated that any victim is safe in your hands. And that is not just you, Andrew Ford, any lawyer from Kirk to McConkie. A church lawyer is not the person for this. Now, this is not the only thing we need to say about this. Andrew Ford is supposed to have been retiring for, this has been in the works for several years. It appears that that's off the table, and it doesn't surprise me to note that this comes in at a place when DBS checks are now coming in, and there's quite the little the financial incentive for someone to stay unretired.
What is interesting is whenever we've said to anyone, and people have asked us with genuine interest, some kind of professional children's charities and other external professionals we've worked with have said to us, so how does your church do DBS? And when we've kind of said, and they said, hang on, the abuse helpline lawyer who advises your church leaders is paid by the church, and his firm do the DBS checks. I said, yeah. Right. And people have, this is what people have said to us, isn't that a significant conflict of interest? And there's a lot of people who said that to us. Is that not a conflict of interest? No. As I'd always say whenever we have these discussions, if we have got all of that wrong, then tell us, and we will put it right. And we will apologise, and we will put it right. But I don't believe we have got it wrong. And this is we didn't start saying this is a conflict of interest. Other professionals pointed that out to us and said, that's a conflict of interest. And we're like, you know what, you're right, it is.
We didn't publicly say it, but when this was brought in, oh, believe you me, we were saying this, and we were having this conversation filling in the Brit Avengers, who were equally horrified. Now, let me just explain how this works. Every background check, every DBS check or PVG check that happens in Scotland and the Republic of Ireland, every one of those costs an amount of money. For every one of those DBS checks, so for every leader in every stake in every ward throughout the United Kingdom, throughout the British Isles, when that DBS check is done, it goes to Andrew Ford's office, and Andrew Ford's office get an amount for
to the best of our knowledge. To the best of our knowledge. Now, we have to acknowledge they may be doing it completely free of charge. They may.
Please tell me you're doing it free of charge, and I will come back here and apologise. I will take this down.
We will do an entire podcast apologising if we've got this wrong. But my understanding is Andrew Ford's firm are paid to answer the abuse helpline and to run the abuse helpline. And in fact, I think Andrew Ford said something in the independent inquiry that was held in this country on sexual abuse about the church spending £150,000 a year or something on safeguarding in the UK, or they'd spent £150,000 on safeguarding. So I don't actually know what they spent it on, if it isn't things like the helpline and because at that point they weren't doing DBS. They weren't doing DBS at that point. So what the heck they were spending £150,000 on, I have no idea.
Can you guys see, we haven't wanted to talk about things like this because we haven't wanted to derail safeguarding.
I think it's too far
This,
down the road now for safeguarding to be
yeah,
derailed, which is why we feel okay speaking about it now.
yeah.
It's too far down the road to derail it.
So, which you mentioned before, but just to highlight, these are things that are, one, in the public interest for you to know about it, and certainly church members should know about it. Certainly, the political system should know about it. This is really significant, and Sara has felt that where she's at right now, we can share it a wee bit more robustly. Sara,
Can I just say, actually, around the conflict of interest, the most number of people that have said that to us have been TBMs that are like, have been a bit shocked by it. They're like, what?
Absolutely.
Seriously? Yeah. And it's been actually TBM members of the church that you wouldn't hear a word of criticism about the church from, but they've been quite shocked by that. And the other bit of that is, the church are putting resources into this abuse helpline that is only accessible to church leaders. They are not putting the same amount of effort into anything accessible to victims. And we have one example of this. We had contact from a LADO. Now, LADOs are local authority designated officers that are responsible for investigating, looking at situations where somebody in a position of trust, like a teacher, a clergy, a doctor, anybody like that, might have been possibly involved in abuse, and they're responsible for investigating it along with the police and finding out what's going on. We were contacted at 21st Century Saints by a LADO from a local authority in this country that contacted us because they were aware of us, because we had done a presentation for a children's charity where we'd spoken about the church and safeguarding. So they were aware of us through that. And that had been all about LADOs and how that was working and operating. And we'd spoken about abuse and that within the church. They couldn't find any way of how to contact a safeguarding officer in the church. They couldn't find anything on the church website. They couldn't find anything in the UK that told them how to contact a safeguarding officer in this church. So they contacted us, 21st Century Saints, and said, we are really worried about this person who is the bishop in this local authority area. And gave us all the concerns about what they were worried about, what the discussions they'd had with police were, and that the plan was they needed to talk to a safeguarding lead for the church. The church didn't even have on their website the name of the safeguarding lead and how to contact them and how to make that contact and talk to them. Instead, they had to come to us, and we had to deal with it, and we had to put them in touch with another church lawyer who then had to go back in contact with them. Ridiculous. An organisation with $350 billion, and they can't even have a section on their website of who to contact if anybody is worried about abuse. Except for your state president or bishop. Well, if you're not a member of the church, you don't know who the state president or bishop is, or even what their role is, or even why you should go and talk to them. So that's just another huge problem. And that was, and I think the church were quite embarrassed. They were quite worried about that. And I said, I think you need to sort your website out. I said, because I don't want LADOs phoning me up. And the lawyer said, he said, we don't want them phoning you either. And I said, well, then you best sort out your safeguarding.
And they still haven't.
No, they still haven't done it.
To your great surprise. Okay,
still haven't done it.
Sara, last week, you knew this conversation was coming with your state president. He did extend a release, and so you didn't have to send in your notice this time. However, what you did in advance of this was to have
I'm just laughing about what my family said about this release.
I'm just bringing us up to it now. I want to just let you know, Sara, the time is 20 to 10. Okay, just so that you know.
We were going to be an hour. We said we would be an hour at a max, an hour and a half. Okay, let's speed this up, Jane. Come on.
We're not speeding it up. What we're going to do is not get distracted. Okay, Sara. Last week, once you had heard about this interview that was going to take place, and you had indicated to your family that most likely you were going to be sacked, can you tell us about the conversation with your family, and then in particular, one very special member of your family?
Well, my son-in-law, who's never been a member of the church, said, well, who tells the state president to release you then? And then my daughter, who has been less active for many, many years, said that would be God that tells the state president who to release. And then my son-in-law turned around at that point and said, would that be the same God that told them they could all have several wives? Was it? Would that be the same God then? And I'm like, stop making a mockery now, shall we, guys?
That would be the one.
I had a conversation. I was speaking to my granddaughter, who's an incredibly amazing person. I'm incredibly proud of the person she is, because she's strong, she's intelligent, she's articulate, and she absolutely sees things for what they are. And she came in and we were talking about church and the calling and it being released and how grateful I was. And I said I can actually kind of step away a little bit more in my mind. And she just looked at me and she said, why are you a member of this church? She said, it doesn't match your values, it doesn't fit with you with integrity. Why are you a member? That's quite a difficult question to answer when you know in your heart of hearts that, why am I a member? Why am I still a member of an organisation that I struggle to trust and have confidence in? Why am I still a member of an organisation that is absolutely not doing the best it can do for the most vulnerable people? And particularly, why am I a member of an organisation that is just, without the consent of the membership of the church, installed a prophet president who has absolutely proved over decades to be extremely homophobic and anti any inclusion and belonging of gay people? He doesn't want church. He doesn't want us queer folks around. And this goes back to written statements he's made going back to the 1970s that became progressively more and more kind of outrageous. And I just thought, why? I thought, how can I remain a member of this church when my continued membership of this church looks as if I'm conferring legitimacy onto this presidency? And I don't want what this church is doing to my queer brothers and sisters, my gay community, my gay self, my gay friends. I don't want what this church is doing to us to be seen to be in my name because I'm a member of the church. I don't want the way this church goes to court to advocate for itself over and above victims and managing what victims need. I don't want my continued membership of this church to be taken or seen by anyone as me conferring legitimacy upon this presidency, which is why I kind of came to a really painful.
Your grandkid, that exceptional human being, told you that they thought you should do something. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, we spoke a little bit about voting opposed and sustaining somebody, and I said I think my heart of heart is telling me that I have no choice but to vote opposed to this president. I said, because I believe that his homophobic attitudes are so deeply entrenched that they are part of who he is. They're not simply there because he thinks this is God's will. This is absolutely who he is and how he wants to see things be. And I said I just can't do this anymore. And Jane, remind me of your question again, because my mind is going all over the place.
Your granddaughter had
That's right.
told you why she felt that you needed to vote.
Yeah. And I spoke to her and I said, well, I could vote opposed. I said I could turn up at the next conference and I could, when they asked for a sustaining vote, I said I could stand and put my hand up and say, I oppose. I said that would be probably, I said I have done that before. But at that time I had another fellow Brit Venture sitting next to me holding hands with me, and we both stood up and did that together. That was a few years ago. I said I could go and do that. I said, but he's still going to be the prophet president of the church regardless. And she looked at me and she said, well, don't you think you should go and use the voice you've got? She said, I read a quote she said recently, that even if the voice you use is shaking with fear, you should use that voice to speak for people who can't speak for themselves. She said, so don't you think you should go and do that? And at that moment, I just looked at her and I thought, you know what? She's right. I thought, I cannot continue to be a part of an organisation that so fundamentally doesn't want me, unless I leave who I am at the chapel doors, unless I leave who I am outside the building. They don't want me. They don't want all of me. They don't want everything about me. They want this little bit of me that they can use and mould and shape and control. They don't want me as a person. And
Tell us about you voting opposed. Tell us about that.
Well, I was going to go and vote opposed at state conference. The problem is they weren't having a sustaining vote. And I asked the state president, are you having a sustaining vote? I was quite clear, I'm not going to support. And he said, no. He said, we won't be having a sustaining vote. He said, we did that in March. We won't be doing it again until next year. So I thought, okay, the opportunity
I can
to go.
Hear the voice of Peter Bleakley across the middle, you know, pointing out that even though there's an opportunity to publicly sustain or oppose, to use common consent, that they are not choosing to do that, and instead
absolutely. Well, I mean, the reality is they haven't even followed their own scriptural commands or their own handbook, have they, in installing this presidency? But they didn't with Russell M. Nelson, so I just can't be bothered to go into all that. Peter could do that another time for us.
See Peter in the comments.
No,
continue.
So I was going to go and physically vote opposed, but because they then weren't going to have a conference that included a sustaining vote, I instead wrote a letter to the state president and outlined very clearly that I do not sustain President Oakes. I would be voting opposed if that opportunity was given to me. So take this letter as absolute clarity that I am voting opposed and I do not sustain him and will not sustain him, and gave all the reasons why. It was quite a detailed letter and I gave a lot of explanation, a lot of details as to exactly why I felt that way. I had put something on Facebook that was a diluted version of what I told the state president, but there was something on there. And I sent that letter to him, and he did speak to me and say that he'd received the letter, he'd received the email, and that as soon as state conference was over and we finished with state conference, he would get in touch with me and speak to me about the contents of the letter. And I said, that's good. I said, I'd like to have that discussion. I mean, I haven't heard anything yet, so I'm not sure when we will. But I mean, I didn't include in that letter. I actually didn't include in that letter that I am going to activate the letter of resignation that I wrote 2 years ago. That letter is going to be activated, and I am going to be resigning my membership of this church because I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. I can't keep leaving me who I am to one side whilst giving the church the opportunity to say, and we're doing great for safeguarding, whilst the really key issues are still not being as addressed as strongly and as clearly and as loudly as they should be. And I'd always said, and you know, I own this. I always said I wouldn't resign from the church. I always said I might go completely less active, but I won't ever resign. I thought if they want to kick me out, they can kick me out. That's up to them, but I'm not actually going to resign. But actually, my continuing to be a member serves no useful purpose. It does nothing more than means that they can use just one more person as evidence of the membership they've got. They can use one more person as, see, we're okay. You're a member of the church, aren't you? And you see, it's all right. You can be gaining more because you are. It's all right, isn't it? It's working. No, it isn't working. It is not working. This church is causing harm over and over and over again. Spiritual harm, emotional harm, and all forms of abuse over and over again, because this church cannot let go of the control and the patriarchy and the fear of losing control to the masses. There was Alexander Gramsci, I think his name was, who was an Italian philosopher or writer, and he said that we the people yield power to we the multitude basically give power to the few. And what he was saying was, there's millions of us here in this country. We give power to the leaders by simply doing what they want and obeying them and listening and letting them tell us what to do. And that's quite a powerful quote. I can't remember it exactly, but that's quite a powerful quote, because that's what we do in the church. If we don't like the policies this church have around trans people not being able to be trans at church and not being able to stay at overnight activities, if we don't like the policies around you have to give 10% of your income to an organisation with $350 billion, if we don't like organisations that don't act to safeguard and protect children and vulnerable adults as an absolute priority, then all we have to do as a membership is say, no, not in my name. This is not happening. That is all we have to do. We have to say no. And if enough people said no, any of these policies and practices would fall on their head. They wouldn't be able to stand. And the reality is, I think I ended my letter to the stake president that just said, not in my name.
You did.
Not in my name, not anymore, not in my name. And all of that said, this isn't about me hating the church. This isn't about me wanting to see the church crash and burn. It 100% isn't about me wanting to lose contact with people that are friends and that I love and care about and that I hope will still stay friends with me. I don't know if anybody ever will contact or whatever, but I hope so. It isn't about any of that. It's about simply saying this is not okay. And somewhere along the line, somebody has to do exactly as people have to do in social history of this country, walk down the street with banners saying this isn't okay, it has to stop. And until people in this church are actually willing to say this isn't okay, and you don't get to use my name to commit these harms and abuses, until enough people are prepared to do that, it will continue. And we could have a church that was fabulous. There is so much potential for good in this church, and there are so many phenomenally good people in this church. This isn't a church hating or a church bashing. And it might sound it, but it isn't. This is about you can be better than this. You can do better than this. And you can mean it when you say you want gay people in your church. You can actually mean it. And you can actually mean it when you say you're going to safeguard. You can mean it.
We both still refer to this because I noticed in your letter, you were doing the same thing. We both still refer to this as our church. This is our church.
Yeah, I think we might attach that letter actually to the.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put it in the show notes. Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking. We'll put it in the show notes.
I want to just make sure that we don't cross a line. Sometimes when we are really emotive about a subject, I just want to re-emphasize this person. We will not say who you are. We will not say who you are. We promise. We will not say what your calling is, because it's just really identifiable. Sara I've had the privilege of being able to see, there's been some wonderful statements of support for Sara and thanks for the work that she's done as she served in her calling. Sara is going to be so missed in the calling, never mind in the church, which should be ashamed that it's losing someone who has been able to do this, who has been so passionate, who's been willing to give up this time to do this. As Sara was talking about her experiences this weekend, and Sara shared an incredible statement of support. Someone had come over to speak to Sara, because Sara's made this so clear for years that when she doesn't know how she's going to handle it if Oakes becomes president, she thinks that might be too much, has made it really clear to all and sundry, safeguarding is the only thing that is keeping me in this church. And so people know this within Sara's stake, and someone I just want to, and I'll come to you to sort of say something about this in a second, Sara, but I just want to make sure that the person who said that, should you get to be watching this episode, that killed me. I was so emotional when I heard what you said to Sara. you are a beautiful, wonderful, incredible human being. And I am so thankful that you said that, because it touched my heart very, very deeply. Sara, would you say something about that?
I think what was said to me was, now you've been released, now Oakes is president, are you going to go? And I said, yeah, I think so. I said, I don't see any way of staying anymore. There's nothing to stay for. I said, I can't stay any longer. And this person said, I think that's the right thing to do. So I think it's the best thing for you. I think you will be happier. You will find yourself. And I think it's absolutely the right thing for you to do. And actually, this was somebody who
Yeah.
people could criticize strongly for saying that, but it actually meant a huge amount. And I mentioned about that I don't want to lose contact with friends, and this person said, we're friends. We're friends. It's not dependent on you being a member of the church. I was really supportive when I was clear, yeah, I need to go. And this is somebody who probably shouldn't have been saying any of that, but said it because they're human.
Yeah,
and they knew, because he said I know the pain. He said, I see what this is taking for you to stay. You I think you need to go.
Yeah. You incredible person. Sara, how concrete is that decision?
Oh, it's
This is your
look. I have made this decision. I've made this decision. I'm quitting this church now. Let's just hold out, because we believe in hope in this church. If for any reason the stake president comes back to me to have that meeting about all the concerns I've raised, and he can come up with some magical, incredible, phenomenal explanation for absolutely everything, and some absolute certainty of how different things are going to be in the future, then we might have something to talk about. But I have no hope in my heart that will happen.
Right. So you're joining another church then, Sara?
Do you know? Come on, let's knock this one on the head, shall we? This conversation keeps getting brought up over and over again. I, at this moment in time, have absolutely no plans or intention to join another church. What I would say is there is another faith community, another Restoration Church, Community of Christ, that I associate with, I hang out with, I meet with, because they're inclusive, they make you feel you belong, they're loving, they're kind, they're welcoming. I love them. I love their theology. I think if their hymn book could actually missionary proselyte convert the entire world, if they got their hymn book out there with the words of their hymns, I spend time with them. I love them. But I have no intention to join them. And what is so wonderful is that I have no expectation that I do.
Right,
it's like,
exactly.
Come to this residential weekend, come to this meeting with us, come and have dinner, come over for the day, come and join us. We're having this meeting here.
But there's another one in the comments.
Oh, Richard Barrington,
brilliant.
See, but absolutely no one is saying, you've been hanging around with us for the last 3 years. When are you going to join? You're going to get baptized. You're going to join the church. They're just like, oh, it's lovely to see you.
Right.
You know? So no intention, no plans, but who knows what the future may bring. Meanwhile, I'm going to continue to hang out with people who are good to hang out with.
Right, who recognise.
And also, can I just make this abundantly clear? Just because I am leaving the church does not mean to say this church does away with our scrutiny or safeguarding. Don't ever think that, church. Don't ever think that, because all you've done is taken off you've taken off a little bit of we'll play nice. So you've just taken that away.
Okay, Sara.
Well, no, you haven't taken that away. I've given it away because I don't want it anymore.
Right.
We will continue to hold you to account, church, and we will continue to bring to the light any abuse, problems, injustices that we continue to come across and to see and to hear. We will continue to do that. The fact that I'm not a member anymore doesn't mean that we're going to sit there and leave you in peace.
Nah,
So I'm sorry, if you
it's
think that's
not
what we do,
really.
if you think that's what we do in church, we're not.
It's not our style.
It's not, is it?
Let's do a couple more hand grenades
Right, it's
before
an hour and
we
a
let
half.
everyone go.
It's 10 o'clock.
It is. I'm going to throw out another couple of things out before
Go for it.
I let everyone disappear, because I
Go
think
for
you'll all
it.
enjoy this. Question, Sarah, what are you planning to do with the over 3,000 emails regarding safeguarding that you have currently on your computer?
Hang on.
How did you get over 3,000
Hang on.
emails?
I've got something I want to show you. Hold on. This is spur of the moment. I wasn't anticipating this. This is filled with shredded paper that needs to get actually incinerated, put through a shredder. It's filled with notes and notebooks that we have filled and filled and filled with information around safeguarding with people that have spoken to us. There's actually 2 carrier bags like that are waiting to be shredded.
Let me just clarify. This is
3,000 odd emails.
Sarah, just to clarify. So when it comes to safeguarding and the work that 21st Century Saints do, we keep everything completely confidential. All the information is stored securely and confidentially. No one can access
anything to do with victims. And 100%, anything to do with victims is absolutely, completely and utterly nobody can access it.
So yeah, that's
the
situation.
I have got on my computer, and I know this only because I started trying to move them all into a folder and I got absolutely fed up with it after about several hours work. I've got about over 3,000 emails, all relevant and related to conversations with church lawyers, DBS.
Right, this is where ADHD Sarah is very excited right now. So let's just to be clear, the emails that Sarah's talking about are in relation to her stake safeguarding specialist calling. Okay, so these are completely separate. 21st Century Saints communications are completely different. And
I'm pleased you made that. To be honest, Jane, I'm pleased you made that clarification, because that's really important. That is important.
So, just in relation to this admin paperworky, could be done by a clerk type calling, you have over 3,000 emails on your computer. What you doing with those, girl?
I know. What am I meant to do with them? I think the church needs to urgently set up a church account for safeguarding specialists, and they need to urgently not have them sitting on my home computer with no security, no whatever, no anything else under the sun. I think the church needs to urgently think about what they're doing with that. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them.
These are emails that should be held in a confidential way. This is information, hey, church, that you would have if you listened to your
these are emails where I've had conversations with bishops, lawyers, DBS office, individuals relating to DBS checks, sometimes about online safeguarding training, sometimes about church audits, about problems that have been hit within the DBS system, about barriers that we've had to kind of push and argue a bit to overcome, about DBSs that have been needed, DBSs that are not being completed, all sorts of problems. There is like thousands and thousands of them, and they are clogging up my computer. I don't really want them there. But
my next, what do we do? I might just let this be the last one for the moment, until, because we've yet to write an extensive list of things Sarah's decided she can talk about now. Sarah, do you recall, talking of emails? I feel like this is like a select committee. What is it they call them in America?
Well, the House of Commons.
Yes,
I don't know what they call them in America.
In America, when you have like a similar thing where they're like, right, and they're all asking and they're expecting answers.
I do.
Sarah, tell us what have you? Talking of emails, have you ever received any email from a church lawyer, potentially with the initials AF, by accident? Have you ever?
I have. And I was asked to delete it, but I have received it. I have.
All right. Why were you asked?
But it was copied in relevant information about a sexual offender active at church. Right. So it was very useful to kind of as safeguarding to know about it.
So
But
when
yeah,
we're talking about information being stored correctly, sometimes we have to contact the church to say there is a serious situation with a known offender in this ward. What are you doing about it? Has this, and if you do know about it, has this person's record been correctly annotated, and is there a risk assessment in place, that kind of thing. And yeah, we we got in touch about that. Of course, he doesn't, made it very clear. Here's the handbook. No, we're not talking to you, and we're being ignored. But then, to our great surprise, we got an email with quite an extensive update.
And it did actually admit that, yes, this person was here. Yes, the bishop wasn't aware of his previous conviction. Yes, he has attended this congregation. And, well, this is what we're going to do about it. Oh, crap, I should have sent that email to you. Can you delete it?
Well, that was the next email.
It was the next one. You're right, it was the next one.
The email was, can you delete this immediately? Do not share it. I mean, so I will not comment whether
I have nothing more to say. The matter is now closed.
The
matter is now closed.
Yeah, we have. It's been suggested by someone we respect a whole lot that Sara writes. Sara writes a book about this journey and what lessons can be learned. And there's that's just a sort of flavour of so much has been held back by Sara in this journey. Even during this conversation, Sara's feelings get put in the back burner because safeguarding is the main focus. Sara, we're going to, as to take us out, I'd like you to share what your legacy is, what you would see as your legacy as you exit the church. Now, because I'm going to leave this with Sara to take us out, and we'll close from there. I want to just remind you all, Sunstone this weekend, come party with the Brits in the UK. It's not too late to get tickets. It's going to be incredible. Nemo the Mormon is going to be there. Peter Bleakley is going to be there. He's hosting a fantastic panel. Rumour has it some very, very cool people like Lachlan Mackay are going to be there. There's some phenomenal keynotes, and a lot of work has been put into making this conference superb. So and you really want to go hear what Peter Bleakley has planned to tell you all about.
There's some fantastic workshops, including a fantastic workshop about what the LDS leadership should be doing, which is kind of what I want to listen to.
Right. The wonderful David Eaton, yes, is going to be doing a fantastic panel as well. So loads of great work from UK grassroots people with a lot to say. Very, very cool people. The other thing is we're going to be back at 8:00 next week with the wonderful David Eaton. We've got a fantastic conversation lined up. We're going to be following up with some of the things that he raises at Sunstone and having a little chat about Sara's journey too. So with that, to take us out tonight, Sara, tell us how you see your legacy in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Do you know, I'm going to preface this with saying that there will be many people that will say this is an incredibly arrogant and prideful statement to make. And there will be many people that will think that and will believe it. But the reality is, years ago, when I joined this church, the church in the UK was not taking anything approaching adequate measures to safeguard and protect children. They were not doing it. They knew they could do it. They knew how to do it. They just chose not to do it because it was inconvenient or expensive or time consuming or whatever, or they felt they were too important to have to do it, whatever garbage thought was going on. Some years ago, we made the decision that we would pay whatever price had to be paid to bring about a change to make this church a safer, healthier place for vulnerable children and young people. Now I've reached a point where I'm stepping away, I'm quitting, I'm resigning my membership of over 50 years in the church. I'm walking away from it, and all that means to walk away from something that is your tribe, your community, your ceilings, your everything else under the sun. All that means, because I can't do it anymore. But in going, the one thing that I will take away with me is I left this church better than I found it. I left this church with DBS checks, with safeguarding specialists, with better training, at least locally, if not everywhere, with people having conversations about safeguarding that weren't happening before, with people talking, discussing it, podcasting on it, monitoring it, taking it seriously, with national charities now looking more deeply at what the church are doing, with members of parliament discussing with us, well, what do you think faith community should be doing? With discussions taking place around that to bring about changes in this church, in this community. And in quitting, I quit knowing that I did everything I could to leave this church better than I found it. And I get that people say that's just arrogant, prideful, and nonsense, but do you know what? It's what I think.
You absolutely do leave this church better than you found it. Thanks so much, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week. Good night.